Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We finally made it. Woohoo! Made it to Friday. So today we're going to be talking about ecological tolerance, which I brought up in yesterday's video, as well as indicator species. So a good example of ecological tolerance is this meme. Rose, I can only grow in perfect soil. Orchids, I can only grow in perfect humidity. Dandelions, dirt is dirt. So this is we'll get there, but this is a really good example. And we're also going to be talking about some bugs today, which is also very fun. All right, so ecological tolerance refers to a range of conditions that organisms can survive before injury or death occurs. So this is going to basically kind of be like any abiotic factor, if it gets too low or too high, can kill things. So salinity, remember that's the amount of salt in water, temperature, sunlight, nutrient availability, pH. So all organisms, including us, so this is bacteria, this is fungi, plants, animals, us, we all have different ranges of what that ecological tolerance is going to be. There's also a range within individual organisms themselves. So you can see on this chart here, so this would be like, let's say, this could be basically any abiotic factor down here. Sorry, my handwriting is awful today. So this could be any abiotic factor here. This could be sunlight. So if there's not enough sunlight, gonna die. If there's too much sunlight, also gonna die. So if we get, closer to the sun, we would burn up and die. And like I said, this changes between organisms. There's always going to be, so when you see these charts, this is high population, low population. This is going to be where they're all dead. You don't see any species here. This part here is going to be all dead. Here it's going to be low population levels. And the green, this is the optimum range. This is where most organisms are going to be able to survive. So it's going to be kind of like a nice bell curve that you'll see with different ecological tolerances. So like I said, different species have different ranges of different ecological tolerances. So for the same thing, two different species could be wildly different in what they can tolerate. And then within species, some individuals will also have slightly different ranges of what they can tolerate. So for example, these two fish, let's say this is salinity, this fish can really only survive at one very specific range. It's a really small range here where it's their optimal range. Whereas for this fish, their optimal range is gigantic. So it's very different between species. Some species have a very small range, some have a very large range. Okay, so in the chat or in, not in the chat, what am I saying? It's Friday. In the comment section, either on YouTube or Google Classroom, whatever is easier, I don't care. What would happen if we put a polar bear in a rainforest? Why? Take 2 seconds. All right, hopefully you paused. Hopefully you answered the question. Welcome back. So if we were to put a polar bear in a rainforest, they would die. This was a scene in the TV show Lost, which probably none of you have ever seen because I'm old. But there was a polar bear in a rainforest. It would die. It would die of heat stroke very quickly. Polar bears are used to very, very cold temperatures. It would be way too hot in a rainforest for a polar bear to survive. It might live a while, but it would eventually overheat, die of heat stroke. Okay, so that's ecological tolerance. So going back to the polar bear, right? It only has a specific range of temperature it can survive in. Knowing this, we can actually use ecological tolerance to measure like the health of different environments. So we have these things called indicator species. And it's species that by their presence, abundance, scarcity, or chemical composition, it demonstrates the quality of an ecosystem. So because we know the ecological tolerance for so many different organisms, we can use that to determine if maybe, like, if it's out of that optimal range for, let's say, like pollution, really high levels of pollution. We know that if organisms are dead, that it's not a good, place and not a good environment. This is also called biomonitoring. So this is an example of a freshwater system. So these are all bugs. These are good indicator species. So bugs are really good, or invertebrates in general are really good indicator species because they kind of have a hard time blocking out the environment. If we were to get into a polluted river, as long as we wouldn't open our mouth or open our eyes underwater, we'd be fine if we didn't have any cuts. Our skin really protects us from anything that's coming in. These indicator species, however, since they're invertebrates, they have a pretty flux relationship with the outside world. What's outside is probably going to make it inside because they don't have as good as barriers as other organisms. So if there's a stonefly nymph in the water, there's going to be low pollution levels. But if all you find are these worms, there's going to be high pollution levels. So this is a good example of indicator species. So if things are there, we can kind of determine pollution levels. So this is what I actually did my research on when I was in college. I used benthic macroinvertebrates, which just mean bugs that live in water. And different species of those bugs have different ranges of pollution tolerance in a stream. So then based on what bugs are present, ecologists can estimate stream quality. So when I was doing this in college, we used what's called the EPT Index, which is a pretty commonly used indices for stream health. And it looks at 3 different types of benthic macroinvertebrates, again, bugs. So this is an ephemeroptera, this is a plecoptera, and this is a trichoptera, which were always my favorite. They're really, really adorable. They make these like little sleeping bags out of like pebbles, and it's really cute. So you can measure the taxa richness in these 3 groups, and that'll give you a pretty decent picture of stream health. So trichoptera are very pollution intolerant. If you found one of these guys, it was like winning the lottery. These 2 are a little more pollution tolerant. This one, not pollution tolerant at all, but this one is. So I would say, so you could use the different ratios of these 3 organisms to really estimate stream quality. So when I was in college, I went out to a bunch of different streams. I got these big, I had to wear waders, I had to get into streams, and I had to take these big, bags and shove them against the floor of the stream. And then take up the dirt, take collections, and then I would go back to the lab and pick out all the bugs. These 3 specific bugs. I would go through and pick out all the bugs, which was actually a lot of fun. All right, so that is ecological tolerance and indicator species. Since it's Friday and I realize that I'm stressing out a lot of you, and I'm sorry that I'm stressing you guys out. It's Friday. Take the weekend, catch up on any of the missing work you have. If you have questions about the notebook, now's the time to reach out. Finish up the lab from this week, the Island Biogeography Lab. I don't think all of you necessarily finished when we were in class. I will be grading the test soon and putting that up. And we'll probably do test corrections next week for that. So keep an eye out to see your test scores. If you have questions, email me. I also do have office hours today from 2 to 2:20. All right, I think that's it. So no new interactive notebook work. Happy Friday. I will see you all next week. Have a good weekend.